First, I would say it's good to utilize both long form and short form. I like when I see a talent using both and growing in both ways. Partly because right now there is a lot of growth opportunity with shorts. And yes, there are brand opportunities with shorts. But yes, it's work. It takes a lot of consistency for long form, but the payout is so huge once you have an established channel.
Hello and welcome to this week's episode of the YouTube Creators Hub podcast, where I sit down with wonderful content creators and I talk with them about their journey, talk with them about strategy, talk with them about how they make money as a creator, and so much more. So if you haven't already, certainly go over and subscribe to the podcast wherever and however you consume your podcasting content. Today, we have no sponsors. We're just brought to you by all of the things that we have to offer you. First thing I offer is YouTube coaching. If you're looking to take your channel to the next level, your brand, start a podcast, I offer one-on-one coaching. All of that is in the links of this podcast and all of my website URLs that you'll find below. Also, we have probably the best bang for your buck in the creator space. We have a Creators Corner community. You can call it a club. You can call it a mastermind group. It doesn't matter. It's a place where you can rub elbows with other content creators for $5 a month. You get access to that, an exclusive podcast episode recorded by me each and every week on Fridays, as well as our mastermind calls once a month. And we're also going to be doing some workshops throughout the summer where other creators and past guests of the show will come on and run workshops on specific topics like thumbnails, marketing, monetization, and much, much more. So definitely check that out. And then also, if you want to see what I'm up to, resources that I have, tools I like to share, and just thoughts that are on my mind about running an online business in today's 2025 creator economy, take a look at our email newsletter, The Entrepreneur's Minute. And that's it. That's all the ads you're going to hear throughout the show. Now, let's jump into this week's conversation. Hello, everyone, and welcome to this week's conversation on the YouTube Creators Hub podcast. I'm joined today by Joanna Fowler. She is from Shine Talent Group. She's actually head of talent at Shine Talent Group. She's a former creator turned YouTube expert and now head of talent, as I mentioned, at one of the industry's top influencer talent agencies. And again, the name of that agency is Shine Talent Group. Joanna, how are you doing today?
Great. How are you?
Really good. Looking forward to this conversation. I have on creators and podcasters and people who are on Instagram and TikTok, but to have someone like yourself who's behind the scenes as far as a director of talent at one of the top agencies, it's going to be really interesting to hear your perspective. So before we get too far ahead down the road, I do want to ask you, give me your origin story in YouTube. How did you get into this?
I really stumbled into it. So I would consider myself one of the OG bloggers. So I had 4 kids, including twins, and I was trying to share my story with other moms, and that blew up. And then I hit a point where I felt like I couldn't tell my story very well. I needed to do a day in the life and show more about how I manage everything as a mom. So I just took a stab at YouTube and it took off right away. And then it morphed into lifestyle, home, decluttering, parenting for quite a few years. Yeah. So then I started to travel and speak at conferences to teach other creators about YouTube and who were established on other platforms, but how to move their content, storytell on YouTube. And that's when I realized I really loved the other side. I really loved the strategy side and helping other people become the stars. So I like to consider myself a retired creator now on the other side, helping other people grow their platforms and tell their story online.
So tell me exactly what you do with your title being what it is at Shine Talent. What exactly do you do day to day?
Yes. So First Shine is based out of Toronto, LA, and the UK. So we are growing rapidly, yet we really conduct ourselves still as a boutique agency. So we keep our rosters small, and it's so much more than just talent management. We help build brands. We have a literary agent, we develop products, and we really look at the big picture, which I love. So my role, I'm based out of the Toronto area. So I'm the head of talent in Canada. We all work together as a team. So I manage a team of talent managers. I have a small roster myself that I manage. And I also provide a lot of strategy for our talent and our team.
So on a day-to-day, let's say you get up in the morning and you go to work. What does a day or typical day look like for you? Is it a lot of emails back and forth with talent that you currently have in your roster? Is it trying to do talent acquisition? What does that look like?
It's mostly meetings, which I love. I love to connect with people and come up with ideas and pitch. So it's either with meetings with my team, so my talent management team, helping them navigate with their talent, the opportunities there. It is also in a lot of meetings with agencies and brands, pitching my own talent or other talent with Shine, and also meetings with my own talent, which would be just keeping them up to date, strategy, and then I would be doing strategy calls as well. I do have an associate who helps me. There are a lot of emails and there's a lot of negotiating and pitching and everything, but I wouldn't be able to do it without them as well.
And I assume a little bit of what you do is helping your talent acquire brand deals and monetization for their channel outside of the YouTube Partner Program. And so we'll certainly get into that as we go through this conversation. But what does one of those calls look like with one of your talent, with a creator on YouTube? What does that normally consist of? You mentioned strategy.
Yes.
How do those calls look? Do they come at you with a bulleted list of things they want to go over, or do you analyze and audit the channel beforehand, or is it a little bit of both?
A little bit of both. I do a quick audit beforehand typically, but I also really like to go into the meeting just hearing from them, hearing what their goals are. Often it's a conversation about posting consistently because, as we know, that's the number one thing with YouTube. Whether they're posting a lot of shorts, but they're not exploring long form, we would talk about what that would look like, or vice versa. And then it's even looking at what videos are working, what aren't. Maybe it's the SEO, so how they're titling their videos. So we'll go in different routes depending on where I can see that they could have support. But I'd love to dig into that and just have a look at what's working, what's not, what would be attractive to brands as well.
What looks different now in 2025 than it did, 5, 10 years ago, however long ago it was that when you were creating on YouTube? What's changed? What are the different buzzwords and the things that you find yourself going over? You mentioned consistency and things like that. What else is there?
This is what I love about YouTube is that it is so consistent. So there's so much that's the same that's 10 years ago. That's pick your day and stick to it, and to know how to tell your story. The types of videos are typically the same. Yes, there's some new niches coming in and everything, but the big one would be shorts, short form. That is the new one that has come in, and we see a lot of growth with that. So that would be the main one. There's other features that YouTube has brought in, but that's something that, especially when I'm trying to give strategy to a talent who maybe has grown their platforms on TikTok and Instagram, and they want to also then start growing on YouTube. That's my biggest selling point, is that Instagram and TikTok and other platforms can be frustrating because the algorithm is constantly changing. But from my own experience and what I've watched, is overall YouTube is so consistent, and there's really a direct formula how to grow on YouTube.
So obviously we're not going to talk about the entire formula, but can we do a TLDR of the formula of what's working right now? Like when you get a new client, or you're bringing someone on, or you're pitching your services, what does that package look like for people listening to this show who are thinking as they're listening, I'd love to know that formula, or why isn't it working for me, or I'm not seeing the growth? A lot of my coaching clients, I'll have one call with them and they expect to make the changes and come back on the next call, and it just automatically they're viral and they're the next Mr. Beast. But that's just not how this thing works. So can you just talk about that formula a bit and just how you break it down?
Absolutely. So first, I would say it's good to utilize both long form and short form. I like when I see a talent using both and growing in both ways. Partly because right now there is a lot of growth opportunity with shorts. And yes, there are brand opportunities with shorts. But yes, it's work. It takes a lot of consistency for long form, but the payout is so huge once you have an established channel. The formula would definitely include knowing what your pillars are. So and I do we're bringing in more people with our team that focus on gaming and streaming and different niches. But my bread and butter and what Shine has generally focused on mostly over the years is beauty, home, lifestyle. So I really like to look at the pillars and cycle through what you're doing. So are you doing chatty video first, or storytelling, and then vlogs? Is it a declutter or a grocery haul, that type of thing, a get ready with me? So there are those typical videos and you can branch out from there. But I do like when I see them cycling through, and I think that's a really good formula. As much as series can be I sometimes steer people away from them, or I say batch create first, then post, because it is a lot of work and it can sometimes wear people down. A lot of people don't finish series. So I like more for them to know what works, and then they do that. If say you're sick and you're supposed to post every Wednesday, I always say still pick up the camera, talk to camera for 2 minutes, talk about, oh, I've been sick this week, post it. Just get something up. And sometimes that type of raw video can really resonate with your following. Depending on the channel, a lot of it does not need to be overproduced. It more needs to be about that connection with your following. And then there needs to be that narration or storytelling piece. So if we're looking at a vlog, you want to make sure that you're moving through narration or storytelling to then some B-roll, and then maybe it's more storytelling and then a montage. You're giving your audience breaks. You're using music and different pieces to tell that story. I also like it when it's not so broad. So if you're doing a vlog that you're filming throughout a week, is there something that you can touch base on a few times? Maybe it's trying out some new makeup, or you're putting in a garden and you're circling back to that. Another great formula, and here's some of my YouTube tips, is to make sure that your title is very SEO friendly. So you're titling your YouTube video very SEO friendly, but then your thumbnails, that second opportunity to catch someone's eye. So when everything comes up once you've searched, that's your second opportunity to maybe give it a second title and some really eye-catching thumbnail imagery that can pull people in. Another tip for growing on YouTube would be to add links to your own videos in your description or other YouTubers, because YouTube likes to reward anyone who stays in YouTube, and that can help boost you in the algorithm.
How does somebody get better at storytelling?
I think if you're focusing on what you know, it can start to come naturally. And you have to also know that the beauty of YouTube is you can edit. So just let it flow, start showing pieces of your life, tell your story. And also it could be something where maybe you are a beauty creator and you're doing a get ready with me, but think of some specific story. And again, don't go too broad. Maybe pick a piece of it out, and it can be something that you can pull apart and tell and share more. And also listen to what is in the comments, what your followers are saying, and that will guide you into what they want to see more and hear more about. But it does take some time to get more comfortable, but as long as you're sticking with what you know or your own stories, I feel like it's more organic and it will come really naturally.
Yeah, I feel storytelling. I was talking to a client this morning, and he was saying that he just got done reading a couple of books on storytelling, and he felt like it was the thing that came the most unnatural to him, was to be a storyteller. And I think that one of the things creators can do is, like you said, just turn the camera on. And even if you don't post it, just talk to the camera, get better at just the fluidity of being able to speak to the camera as if you're speaking to your audience and community. And I want to tell into that, talking about community. How important do you and the agency you work for consider community? Because there's a big rising crop of faceless YouTube channels with AI, and they're not really community based. They're more based on search or virality. And although some of them have communities that are built around them, they're niched communities, whatever they may be. How important is that, especially for those people that are possibly coming from Instagram or TikTok or Twitch or whatever, and they're coming to the YouTube space? So as far as community building goes, what are your thoughts and strategies on that?
Yeah, it's definitely very important. And you really need to think ahead about how you will be partnering with a brand. So you want an engaged community. You want to build trust. These faceless channels, they might have affiliate links, and that could work for them, and that could be the way they monetize. But if you're looking to really have an interactive brand partnership, you need to have that relationship with your following. And I always like to think about it too, think about it as if you're sitting down and having a cup of coffee with them. So to read the comments and make sure that you're engaging, that engagement is so important. Also know that yes, if you're moving from Instagram, say, to YouTube, some people will come to YouTube, but you're also going to be building likely a very different community within YouTube organically. I like to be very strategic about content. So where is your piece of content originating? And then how can you use all of your other platforms? Are you going to have a long form video and YouTube and then have shorts, cut downs, or complimentary videos to go with it that then you can also put on Instagram and TikTok? Are you showing something on Instagram and saying, I'm telling the longer story, or I'm showing the full thing on YouTube, move over there? So really think about how people would move and human behavior. And just to touch on storytelling again, I want to say that anyone who's nervous or finding that storytelling is hard, again, don't forget that music and editing is your friend. So you can tell a story and you can change the tone of a story by the type of music that you pair with it or the B-roll that you're showing during it. You can make a story so much more interesting with the magic of editing.
Yeah, it just adds breaks in the action. And I listen to a lot of podcasts on YouTube. And I think that's one of the newer ways in the past few years that people are consuming YouTube content is these long form videos like what you and I are doing today. This conversation will be around 30 to 35 minutes long, and some of my episodes are even longer. And some of the content that I consume from some of my favorite podcasts are multiple hours. So I think that we're learning that any way we can break it up. Now, you don't want to do too much. There is something to be said about doing too much, but breaking it up with a bit of B-roll or a bit of music or whatever it may be to give that visual of what it's going to be about. I love that. I'm glad that you mentioned that. Obviously, people are not necessarily paying you, but you're getting a percentage from your agency. So there has to be benefit to going with the agency. So let's talk about monetization now. How are you helping creators get money? How are you helping them find monetization buckets for their content on YouTube? And what are the various ways that you're doing that now?
Absolutely. So it's mostly through brand partnerships. We do explore, like I said, brand building in other ways too. But for YouTube specifically, it would be brand partnerships. And the way that Shine works is we always start with a trial agreement. So you trial us, we trial you, and then we move into the exclusive time. And we're always very careful and want to, so it's very much creators first. So if we see that not many leads are coming in and not many pitches are landing for whatever reason, and sometimes it can just be a growth period and things like that, we will say it doesn't make sense right now for you to have management, but it makes a ton of sense to go once you're growing and things are happening to go to an agency, because as a creator, it can be a very lonely job. And suddenly you feel like there's not enough hours in the day and you need to start delegating and building out a team. And it is a great way to add to your team, because not only are you just relying on yourself pitching or the leads coming in, you have a whole team of people now pitching you and already have those relationships with the agencies and the brands. And so you're getting really great brand deals and longer brand deals. We are great at negotiating bigger rates. And also and there's that piece where you can focus on what the art and the creativity and the piece that you need to do, and we can handle everything else, whether it's the agreements or the negotiating or the rates or the logistics that go into a brand deal, which there is quite a bit. So it's really beneficial. And again, we really try to have added value. So there's that strategy piece, and we try to look at other opportunities that we can bring your way that make sense for the direction you want to go in.
Try to be as open and transparent as I can on this show. And so if you don't mind, I'd like to talk numbers for a minute. And you don't have to give exact numbers for a specific situation. But the first thing I want to talk about is how many views does a video need to get in order to have a brand deal? Or how many subscribers does the creator need to have? These are all questions that I get thrown at me on a weekly basis. So give me the top-down speech of, okay, it's obviously a range, but here's what you're looking at, and here's the amount of money you'd get for that possible brand deal.
Absolutely. It's bigger than, there's more of a holistic approach than just your numbers on your YouTube channel. We are looking at, it's pretty important to have Instagram, or do you have TikTok? So we want to see where else you're growing, because often brands like to have multi-layer deals. If it is someone who is building on YouTube and they don't have larger platforms anywhere else, it can really depend. Truthfully, it depends on the niche you're in. I think that we would start looking at anyone who has at least 10,000 subscribers and is monetized. But again, we would be looking at your engagement, your growth rate, where else you're growing, and the niche you're in. So I think when you're growing on YouTube, you want to look at the big picture, and also the types of videos you're creating. How do you see a brand coming in and partnering with you? So if you have a really great idea, for example, we've had a creators partner lots of times one with Better Health recently, and that was with a day in the life and what I eat in a day and about intuitive eating. So you need to think about how is a brand going to come in and partner. And so yes, the numbers matter, but it's more than that. And again, consistency, because there's been times lately where we'll be looking at a creator who maybe is getting a lot of brand deals on Instagram and TikTok, but we want to start pitching YouTube more. And we'll go and look at the channel. They haven't posted in 3 months, and we can't pitch them, or we can, but it may not land because the brand will quickly see that there's not that consistency. So it goes back to that consistency. You're putting the time in. It's all of those pieces put together.
Yeah, I appreciate you sharing that, because I think that it is important to talk about that side of it. Like you said, you have to think about it from the brand's perspective. It's not just all sheer numbers. It's about interactivity, because at the end of the day, they just want people to click on that link and then possibly purchase their service or their product or whatever they're pitching via the ad. And sometimes I've worked with creators that have very low subscriber numbers, but have a very interactive and very active audience. And a brand is very happy to partner with them at a very high rate, because they know that the actual people who are going to take action on this is important, and that trust you're building with your audience. And I think that all of those things are extremely important when it comes to that. As far as creators that are dealing and trying to work with brands themselves and they're not a part of an agency, what advice would you give them?
I would definitely, brands, especially these days, really like you to come almost like that you've put a brand, you see the whole brand deal, that you see how it would work, and you really pitch all of the details. They like that. They can always change it. It's almost like a reverse engineering. So if you're going to go to a brand, you can build a deck about yourself. You can link within the email at the pitch, but then a reverse engineering of the brand. I would say that's where the agency comes into play, is that we have these relationships with these brands. We have a direct connection. So they will see that, and we've worked with them previously. We have that rapport with them. So it is great that if you're not having a lot of luck with pitching to brands, to reach out to an agency. And we're always happy to give feedback or meet. We're always casting as well.
What are some of the biggest mistakes that you see creators making in the current season of content creation? Things that they think we've got to do this, or it has to be this way. Maybe misconceptions is a better way of putting it. But what are those things that you're seeing currently?
I would say analysis paralysis. So I love the term done is better than perfect. Just put it out. Don't overthink it. A lot of times when I was a creator, it was the more organic, a bit on the fly videos, vlogs that would just blow up. And then other ones where I put so much time, production, editing into, kind of fall flat. So don't overthink it. Just keep putting them out, stick to your day. Don't be afraid to try new things and to get vulnerable too. There's a lot of others. Again, there's the consistency in those pieces, or just posting to shorts. I really think that people, if you have the capacity to try long form, but that would be it, is the overthinking.
What do you think, working with talent all the time and seeing people's channels and doing deep dives into them, in the current state of YouTube, what's the best balance of long form and short form?
I think that if you can post to short form almost daily or multiple times a week, and then long form once a week, that would be a great combination. But there's no perfect science to it. I think it really depends on your channel and your goals. I do think that long form, you don't want to space them out any more than every other week, or you could post multiple times a week. It's up to you for long form, that consistency. But I would say that's a great ratio.
From a brand's perspective and just the outside looking in, what's the purpose of short form? Have people ask me that all the time, but people have termed it brain rot content. And years ago, when it first came onto the map, I would say on this podcast, because this podcast is almost 14 years old, I would say I'm not too sure about it. I don't know if I like it. And I think a lot of my hesitancy was just my consumption habits myself. I'm not too much of a consumer of it. Now, my wife, on the other hand, she's a teacher, and that's really all video that she consumes is short form. It's just these videos of teachers tidying up their rooms or decorating at the beginning of the year. That's a different consumer than what I am. I'm more of a long form kind of consumer. So what is the purpose of short form, and how do you see it playing a role in people getting brand deals and of that nature?
I think the short form, it's just like TikTok, and I love TikTok and I love short form on YouTube, it's that attention span. They recognize that they're that quick, truthfully, that dopamine hit or that quick piece of entertainment that anyone who doesn't want to settle into a long video. For the long form, I think it much more comes from someone who you're more invested in, and you want that, you want to almost, it's like tuning into your favorite show. You want to settle into something like that. So I think it really reflects the way that our behaviors, I know that my kids, especially I have teenagers, and they would choose the short form over long form. And so there's definitely opportunity with brand deals with the short form. It would, depending on your size, but obviously if you were doing a brand partnership with a long form, you'd have the option of a dedicated video or a quick shout out. But it is a higher rate that we would apply to long form versus short form generally.
I also found that there's danger in growing a channel strictly with short form, because I've had clients come to me and their channel is so messed up. I mean, for lack of better terms, it's just they've grown a channel with just uploading shorts, and they've accepted into the partner program because they reached the metrics of 1,000 subscribers and however many shorts views, and they're realizing that there's no money there, not in the partner program, not for vertical video. So I think there is, for me as a coach and you as somebody who's part of an agency, we have to be instructing and telling our clients, like, shorts are great as supplemental content. And there are some channels that there are outliers, as always, but I think shorts can be a very good complement, like for this podcast, doing bits and pieces, little snippets that we talk about through the 30 minutes that we have our conversation can be very much utilized in short form video. And there's other ways that people are doing it. I have a guy that I was coaching a couple of years ago. He does tutorial series where he'll do like a how to use DaVinci Resolve. It's a 10-part series in shorts, and then he has a long form that he links from all those shorts, and he's found a very good success with it. And so what are your thoughts on that you got to have kind of a good balance?
Yeah. I'm very aligned with how you feel. I think that I have definitely seen growth with shorts, in fact, rapid growth. But then you start to peel back the layers. And to me, I feel like the channel can feel a little shallow or empty, and you want more depth to it. When you're looking at the monetization through YouTube and AdSense, I love to say, people like, how long should I make my videos? I'm like, 10 minutes is a sweet spot, because then you get that mid ad right in there. So I want to try to get as many ads in there. So you got to, again, think of the big picture and where you want to take your content. I also really believe, and I know from experience of having my own channel and followers on multiple platforms, that the followers you can create and build on a YouTube channel is like no other. They are so invested. They feel like they know you. They want to, that time, that day each week, to stop. And that's when they sit down, they've saved your video because they're going to have it with their coffee or whichever. So and then that translates over to your selling power. So if you're partnering with a brand and it's long form, that there's that trust, and you can work it in a way that feels that you can really share about the brand. And I would highly recommend that you choose brands that are very aligned with you and what you would actually use, but that there's just so much opportunity with the long form in terms of monetizing. Again, it is work, but if you really put your focus into that piece, everything becomes so much stronger. And I really like to say to people that to treat a YouTube channel like I see YouTube as completely different as from Instagram and TikTok. Those are social media. This is more of a search engine, and you can see this as your own network. This is your own show. So if you can come into it with that perspective, that work, that time you put in, it makes sense. It's a payoff. And also when you're pitched to a brand and you're doing long form, this is with any social media content, but specifically with long form YouTube, is because I used to be with an agency as well that specialized with YouTube, and they were so good at pitching. And this is what we do as well, is they're the talent, they're the editor, the sound, the director, the videographer. And this is what we need to remind brands, that the viewership on long form YouTube compared to traditional media often exceeds it, and they're getting a deal compared to if they put that ad spend somewhere else. So it's worth it. It's really worth it to put into long form as well.
A lot of good stuff there. First thing, I just want to say thank you for mentioning that about the mid-roll ad, about the 10-minute thing, because people don't like talking about that. They get a little bit squirmy when you start talking about money and making money. I am pro creator making money that I'll talk about anything like that. So I'm not worried about sounding, oh, you're just trying to get a money grab. No, I'm not telling you to put out AI slop and do these channels where you're doing these videos and there's no real content there, no meat. You're just doing it for the money. I'm not telling you that. But as far as a creator who has a piece of art they're trying to create, there is something to be said about optimizing for making money so you can keep doing the thing. So I would agree with exactly what you said at the top of that answer. And some really good stuff there about brands and how they look at long form differently, because you have to think how traditional media was back in the day during cable networks and advertisers running on normal media or mainstream media like CBS, ABC, whatever it may be. These people were watching their large TV in their living room, and they may be in the bed or they may be standing up, sitting on the couch, whatever it may be. A lot of YouTube consumption is on a device where you're a tap away from that person's website, as opposed to, okay, I've got to go get my computer, I got to go get my device. No, you're there on that device, whether it be an iPad, an iPhone, whatever they're using. And so I do believe there's something to be said about that. And so to hear you mention that is very powerful. Are there any tools like that you guys use and recommend to all your creators? I happen to be a gearhead. I love technology. That's what my main YouTube channel is about, is tutorials on technology. So for that being the case, are there any tools of the trade that you recommend to all your talent?
Actually, take this from a different perspective. And I will say a lot of people, it again goes back to that overthinking of I need this equipment and I need that to start. I need that. I said, some of my biggest videos, I started just shooting on an iPhone, just horizontal. And so I will say, get a nice point and shoot. Start there, and then you can start building. You can get a lav mic, and you can start investing in different pieces to really, yes, there's a lot of equipment out there that you can get, and you can get a lot of it on Amazon. You don't have to start with the best. But I would say go down that road, start posting, and then you'll see what you need. And then there's obviously great tools like vidIQ and things like that. And then when it comes to editing, I will say that you can even start with iMovie, and then Final Cut is so similar. So if you just watch YouTube videos, you can teach yourself, and then you can easily make that jump. So don't want to intimidate people with creating a channel with all of the tech and the software. But you can keep leveling up, and you can start adding to it and figure out how you can up your game and make things better. But again, it goes back to the storytelling. It goes back to the consistency. And if you really nail that, and then you can start improving your quality, you'll be going somewhere.
How does AI play a role as we get towards the end of this conversation? I have to ask you, what things and tools or resources are you recommending the talent that you work with, as far as, because we do know AI is here and it's here to stay, and the people who don't use it or are against it are going to get left behind, and those that are embracing it will be the ones ahead of the curve. So what are your thoughts on that?
I would say that for myself, I don't use too much AI in my day-to-day, but I do love ChatGPT, and you could be using ChatGPT for, especially when you plan out your content. So you could put everything about your channel and what you do and what your goals are and everything, and then ask ChatGPT to create a whole brand guide and plan out your videos, a content calendar. And talking points and how you can, when to post. You could ask what's the best time with my demographic. So I think that is where my mind goes immediately, is thinking of it as your assistant, or you're bringing on a branding company or someone who's a strategist. Use AI to tap into that and to really flesh out all of your ideas so that it takes the guesswork out of it.
Yeah, a lot of it's just efficiency, time saving, and being able to allow you to allocate time, like we talked about earlier, to be the artist and the creator, as opposed to doing a lot of that mundane, tedious work that AI can do right now and will only get better at as time goes. So I think that's a wonderful answer. Last question for you. As we end this conversation, what else, or what final word would you say to creators that are listening to this, whether they're growing and thriving or they're struggling and stalling out? What word of advice, or maybe even, I don't know, momentum, could you give them?
I think that there's a lot of good nuggets in there. I would just say again to not overthink what you're posting, experiment, try new things, follow some creators who do some content that's similar and see what they're doing and create your own spin on it and get inspired. And sometimes it can be a case of stepping back a bit and looking at your content and seeing if you need to pivot a little bit or try something new so you get excited. Lock yourself into ideas that aren't bringing you joy. And something I was going to say when building your channel and that piece, when we were talking about being afraid to talk about monetizing your channel or selling out or anything, as long as you know your why, like why did you start? So for me, when I started to be a YouTuber, the true answer is I was showing twin moms how I was feeding both of my twins and changing them at night when they're both crying and the logistics of it. And that was where it started. And then it started to become, okay, let me show my whole day. It was me. I was speaking to twin moms. They're now almost 11 years old. So that was many years ago, but that was my why, was to equip parents with some tools and know-how and make them feel less alone. I was very big about parents knowing that, and moms, that we're all in this together and that you're not alone. So to know your why of who are you talking to? Why are you doing this? What was the reason? And that can, years down the road when you're stuck, it's good to stop, say, why did I start this? Why did I start this journey? And to go back to the beginning and remember, maybe it's different. Life changes and you pivot and you start to create different content. But just to remember what brings you joy, because if you have joy creating the content and you feel like it's filling that creative bucket when you're building it, your storytelling, it will show through with the content. It will shine through instead of just trying to you can be inspired by other people, but don't try to duplicate what someone else is doing. Make sure that you're circling back to what makes sense for you, and that will really resonate with your following.
I love that. Joanna, you have been an amazing guest, and I will leave all of Joanna's links. If you think that your channel is a good fit for her agency, Shine Talent Group, I'll put the link to that. And there's also a link to Joanna's Instagram as well. We'll put that in the show notes too. So, Joanna, thank you again so much for joining us today.
Thank you. It was so great. It was such a good conversation.
That's it for this week's episode of the YouTube Creators Hub show. I'm so glad that you guys decided to join us. Don't forget to check out everything that we have to offer. We have one-on-one YouTube coaching that I do myself. We have the Creators Community, which you can join for $5 a month, and you get access to all the things like an exclusive podcast episode each and every Friday. You get access to all the creators that are there in the Discord server. You get the monthly mastermind calls and the future workshops hosted by past guests and myself. So if that's interesting to you, definitely check that out. And then lastly, I would like to remind you about our email newsletter, The Entrepreneur's Minute. It's absolutely free. I'm not going to spam your email inbox. And every Friday, I release a thought or a topic or a book I'm reading or a resource. And you get a behind the scenes look of things that I'm struggling with, my failures, things that I'm thinking about throughout the week, and ideas and resources that I can share with you through the email newsletter. So definitely go check that out if you haven't already. So with that said, have a great rest of your day or week, and we'll see you guys next time.